The following is a special presentation of the Buccaneers Sports Network. This is the Jay and Keith Show. Two broadcasters, two microphones, and one meticulously scripted podcast.
You what?
Just kidding. Get it, J.K.? You get it.
That's what I thought was so funny. It's not funny.
Alongside Keith Brake, here's the voice of the Bucs, Jay Sandos.
All right, Jay and Keith Show with you on a Monday on the podcast. We're talking ETSU football. We will talk very quickly Southern Conference football, and we'll talk men's and women's basketball. I think a productive weekend for both, even though I know men didn't win the championship game against Louisiana Lafayette last night on ESPNU, or evening on ESPNU. Certainly, I thought a good showing for the two games for them. Brenda Mock-Brown doing spectacular things on the women's basketball side, or should I say Giselle Thomas is doing spectacular things.
Indeed.
On the women's side, and we're going to talk ETSU football and the Blue Ridge border battle and what was another ETSU somehow entertaining one-score game that is somehow written in everybody's contract that will ever be the coach at ETSU, which is good, I think, in one regard, that you keep people normally in the stands to see how the game is going to end. It's just the flip result in 2018, 2021. We've talked ad nauseum. Everything went the Bucs' way. In 19 and 22, it has not gone the ETSU's way. I will say this. I was curious because of all the talk from the coaching staff, both coordinators, about the bye week, the freshness. You should see a little bit different, little bit play out of guys. Look fresher, look faster, look speedier. I think certainly came to fruition because West Carolina came in averaging 500 and something yards of offense, 33, I think it was, points per contest, and it was a 2017 game. So, you know, the wise guys thought 75 points was going to be scored betwixt the two teams, and boy, did they show you that they were not going to score. But I think it overall, when you just look at the team numbers, I think it showed that ETSU, and they gave up yards, but when they needed to make plays in the red zone, they had a couple fourth down stops. They had a couple red zone turnovers, 2 interceptions in the red zone, forced a turnover on one of those fourth down stops. Plus, ETSU had a bad fourth down turnover on their end where Trace Kelly just dropped the snap but somehow threw an incompletion, and then that actually defense held and didn't give up a point. So there were some yards given up, but when it really got down to it, ETSU was able to make some plays defensively, and that's kind of what we were wanting to see. Was ETSU going to give up another 40 or 50 burger to a team that likes to put up that many points, and ETSU's defense gave 20. I think Elijah Hussey played one of the best games you could play in a Buccaneer uniform from a secondary standpoint. It's unfortunate, and he was down on himself because the miracle punt that was thrown, or whatever that was, that ended up going into reception, Hussey was beating himself up over it a lot and was kind of taking the blame and couldn't believe it. But if you watch the play, I think it would be tough for any human to look at Elijah Hussey and say, you know what, Elijah, that was your fault on that play. Like, I don't know who would say that.
Absolutely. That was a situation where one of the top playmakers on the other team went out and made an extraordinary play. He found an extra gear. He ran around the outside of Hussey, got behind him, and then dove and caught the football. So many things have to break exactly Sincere Lee's way for that to happen. And the fact that they all did happen, I think, is a testament to his ability to make the improbable manifest for Western Carolina. And Sincere Lee, you want to put this in bold prediction, Sincere Lee will be an All-American wide receiver before the end of his college career. If he stays in the FCS, he's an All-American. I think he's that good. He's fast. He's got really solid hands. He made some fantastic catches. He made one in traffic for the first touchdown of the game on the opening drive. It was a really tight window from Gonzalez. Probably could have taken a hit. Probably should have taken a big hit to catch that. But he was the player that impressed me the most of the wide receivers. And Raphael Williams was really, really good. Don't get me wrong, but Sincere Lee's a guy that I just look at and go, I do not want to have to cover that guy for 4 years. He is a really, really special player, and he made a really special play. And I think the same thing can be said of the touchdown that Williams had earlier in the fourth quarter that got them on the board and got them in front. At that point, it was 17-14. He made a great move that just juked a guy out of his shoes. And sometimes that just happens. You go up against great players, and sometimes those great players are going to beat you. And Western Carolina is maybe not a great team. They've had some ups and downs. They've had a lot of inconsistency. They've had moments where they lacked discipline, but they do have star power and explosiveness. And the players that bring that to bear brought that to bear on Saturday. I don't think ETSU's defense should beat itself up over the fact that, hey, they have some extraordinary playmakers, and we weren't able to lock them down every single time, every single play, all game, because that just doesn't happen in football.
I just find it amazing that, again, you give up 475 yards, but, again, the defense gives up 20 points. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's a little bit of what we saw last year in that game where West Carolina had about 550 yards of offense. They had 28 points on offense in the first half. They had that kick return, so it was 35 total points. And then 3 drives got in the red zone and came up empty-handed 3 times in the red zone a year ago. And ETSU was able to pitch the shutout. And, it was another situation, kind of woulda, shoulda, coulda. My guy Juwan Martin gets a touchdown earlier in the game. Mm-hmm. He ends up coughing up the football in the red zone.
He fumbles in the red zone, yeah.
Then there's I was trying to think. There was a couple drops by Wilson would have kept drive alive. He caught one later. It did keep a drive alive, but he dropped a couple, I think, 2nd and 10 passes that would have been for a first, hit him in the hands. I mean, just, Tyler Riddell missed a wide-open Quinn Caballero and an Isaiah Wilson on the play right before the half where he tried to throw it downfield to Anaj Carter. I mean, there were several things. There's plenty of blame to go around at everywhere. This is, it's a team game. Team win, team loses. It's also unfortunate that for whatever reason this year, if there is a call to be made late in the game that appears to would have gone for the Bucs, is not called, and I don't know. I don't subscribe to any theory that because ETSU got a lot of calls last year that this is makeup. I don't subscribe. Everything's kind of its own deal. Didn't get the pass interference call against Samford, didn't get the defensive holding or pass interference call against Wofford, which both are pretty evident. The face mask was atrociously not called. And again, I talked to a couple Western fans that asked me, do you think that cost you the game? No, I don't think it cost me the game. I think asked if it would have cost Western the game. Let me rephrase that. If they would have called the face mask. I said no, because ETSU, there was 2:24 or whatever on the clock. Would have been automatic first down around the 5-6 yard line. If ETSU scores with 2 minutes, I just saw Western go right down the field, in 2 minutes. So given 20 seconds less, do I think they couldn't have gone down the field and potentially scored? There's a couple offenses, Wofford. Maybe
well, you also
trouble,
think,
trouble, but
does getting first and goal at the 6 with 2:20 left change the play calls from the offense? Do you run between the tackles with Sailors a little bit more? Because they certainly weren't shy about doing it. Jacob ran the ball 32 times on Saturday. I think it's a situation where, okay, we want to run some clock because we think we can get down there and score. At the very least, we think that we can play for overtime and kick a field goal right at the very end and force OT. Even if we don't get the win. So, I mean, there are some situations. There is a scenario where, that probably does decide the outcome of the game in that respect, with whatever there is, 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes left. Well, ETSU runs the ball a little bit more.
Western has timeouts.
And
so they left the game with timeouts to had. So they could have stopped clock even if you run the ball. My point is that does not necessarily mean Western would have lost the game if the face mask was called, which what I think the direct question was. Do you think Western would have basically lost the game? Because that was their, I guess, a little bit of their argument on why you don't do it, because, it would have cost them the game. Well, I don't care if it cost somebody the game. If somebody gets
It's
hurt,
a face mask. You throw the flag.
A face mask ripped around, and if it would have happened, I try to be very honest in all my broadcasts. And I even said it in the Mercer game when Mercer got flagged for a personal foul hitting somebody out of bounds where the ETSU guy blocked the Mercer guy into an ETSU player, that was atrocious, egregious, and one of the worst calls that you could have seen. I openly say that if a blatant call – now, pass interference and stuff I get. It's a little more subjective. You would like to see it called consistently and stuff, and sometimes late in the game they just want a player to make a play. Just like late in the game, and we'll talk about basketball later, underneath the hoop, sometimes they don't call a foul. They want people to make plays. I get all of that. My point was it wasn't like there was 13 seconds to go in a game and extended it and the game would have ended on the next play. Western would have called timeouts if ETSU took, which they needed to score a touchdown because they didn't want to. That's my point. I don't think ETSU would have sat on the ball hoping to run 2 minutes off and score a touchdown to win the game. They needed to score, and they would have did whatever to score. And if that took one play, great. If it took 2 or 3, great. I don't think if this was ETSU's Quay Holmes, Jacob Sailors a year ago, you probably could have ran 4 times and hope you scored on the 4th down play because you're going to go for it on 4th and goal at the 1. This is not that team. If ETSU would have gone to that thinking, well, we need to run the clock all the way down and throw a touchdown pass the last second or kick a field goal, send it overtime last second, I think that's a bad theory, especially the way the defense had played. If the defense had given up 55 points, yes, do what you can. Do not let the defense play. But I would have given and still would have trusted the defense. And again, a lot of people would say, well, they didn't stop them 2:24 to go. Yes, they had a miracle play, but who's to say they didn't make a miracle play after ETSU scored? There's a lot of what ifs. My point was they do not automatically lose the game if the face mask is there. They still would have had a shot to hold ETSU to a field goal, turn them over, or if ETSU scores, they got a chance to respond with maybe 1:45 to go because they had timeouts left.
Sure, but it does significantly alter the game flow if ETSU has 1st and goal at the 6 instead of having to settle for a field goal by default, which is basically what happened once the face mask was not called and Rydell was sacked by Jaquarius Gwynn. That was almost an inevitable outcome that you were going to have to bring Keltner on. You were going to have to kick the field goal. It sets up a different scenario where the resources available to Western on their final drive would change. The play calling philosophy might change if ETSU is playing with a lead versus playing with a tie, because now Western Carolina, if you score a touchdown, Western has to score a touchdown to win a game. Field goal doesn't do anything for you. So everything changes philosophically over the course of the last 2 minutes and 25 seconds, however that plays out. So it did change the way the game played out. Did it fundamentally alter the outcome of the game? Not necessarily. There's no real way to say that one way or the other.
And that's my point. Ultimately, I think we're a little bit in agreement here. My point is it did not definitively say ETSU was going to win the game because they got the face mask call and Western had no shot to either tie or win the game. That was ultimately my point. It obviously changes everything because you don't know where it goes.
I do think it significantly decreased ETSU's chances of winning the game that did not get called.
Correct. And again, there was still a miracle throw and catch in that you still couldn't have predicted even when anything happened. And you couldn't predict what would happen down the road. I mean, again, there's no way to know. My philosophy and thought process on any of those is you call that, you see what happens, and the other team still has a chance to make plays. And I think ETSU would not have milked the game away because I don't think they can. They couldn't afford to. So Western would have had a shot. Either way, Western won. I mean, you got to make a play. Western made more plays than ETSU did. ETSU did a lot defensively. They looked a lot more refreshed. They were making plays. They were running all over the place. Everything about ETSU, even the bye week, seemed to have worked exactly how the coaches had said it. And I was a little skeptical of that, to be honest, but they did. Everybody looked a little fresher. Everyone was able to run a little better. Cornerbacks against a much speedier offensive team had nobody running behind them, at least that I saw, running naked behind them. I mean, again, the play that Sincere Lee made, he was on the sideline, he curls around, but it wasn't like he was 10 yards past Huzzy. He was right there and just read the bad throw better than Huzzy.
Yeah.
That was it.
The defense definitely was a lot fresher, and that was very obvious. The bye week helped, but again, like you said, Western Carolina, in a key moment, had somebody, a really talented player, go out and make a big play for him that won him the football game. And that's something that you just you just got to have as a football team. You got to have guys that'll go out there and make low percentage plays a reality for you. And if you don't have that, it can be really difficult, especially in a league where everybody is as tight together as the SoCon. It's going to be really, really hard to win football games consistently.
ETSU probably lost that loss in that last 2.5 minute span of the game was probably the season in a microcosm, right?
I'd say so, yeah.
I mean, no, honestly, if you just look at the way the non-call, field goal, somehow didn't get a stop, somebody made a play. And again, you could easily look back to 2021, and ETSU had a lot of those that went their way, a bounce here, a play there, miracle, throw, catch, whatever it was here and there. So, I mean, even the Kennesaw State game, I mean, you needed a score, an onside kick, and a score, and they converted a 4th and 10 in which somebody forgot that Quay Holmes is on the field and was doing jumping jacks on the left side of the field and caught a pass and walked 12 yards before anybody even noticed it. So, I mean, again, things happen, and it's sports. You get going. It's why we enjoy it. It's why we like it. It was a rivalry game. It felt that way. A walk-off win for a team is always, especially, and my theory, if you've listened to my podcast, I am a huge fan of winning a rivalry game on the road to make the hometown fans leave ill. But it stinks when you're on the other side of that. I'm a big fan of it. Huge fan of it, but it did
I would love to have 3 or 4 more of these games where these two teams go back and forth, and ETSU wins a few and Western wins a couple, and you really get the juices flowing in the rivalry again. Because this is, I said it all last week, this is the most played game in the history of ETSU football. Not Chattanooga, not even App State. It's Western Carolina. This is the oldest and longest series in the history of Buccaneer football, and I think it should be a bigger moment in the year, and people are clearly in agreement with that. Otherwise, you wouldn't go out in the middle of the woods on the Appalachian Trail, pull a rock off the side of a mountain, and play for it. So this is something that I really hope we see a really good back-and-forth series between these two teams over the next decade or so. But you're right. It sucks to be on the wrong side of it.
I mean, again, it was a good game. I thought, again, Kerwin Bell and his staff, creatively, offensively, shocked that, Cole Gonzalez got to start, but not really. I mean, it's just, they're looking to make a play. I think the one frustrating thing was really, and it wasn't frustrating for ETSU not making a play, but I thought Kerwin Bell and Cade Bell drew up 2 third-down plays perfectly to counter what they thought Billy Taylor was going to do. One, the screen, the other kind of that triple option look that I think it was the only time they ran triple option. So,
with the toss pitch or the fake pitch where Gonzalez then just streaks down the field for a huge gain. Yeah. They used the quarterback's running ability. They used Gonzalez's running ability really, really well. That was honestly, he's fun to watch. There's a lot of great young players on that team, and everything is written in pencil in this day and age with the transfer portal and whatnot, and you hear all these rumblings about the way that teams are utilizing the portal. You never know if you're going to hold that group together. But if that group stays together in Cullowhee, they're going to be pretty good. Reed is good tailback. They got a good young offensive line that finally looked like it was starting to gel here at the end of the year. They looked as good as they've looked all season. Gonzalez is a good young quarterback, true freshman. Lee and Williams, and they got so many. They got like 8 young wide receivers that just make you go, man, that's not a bad bunch. They've got some good young players on defense as well. Their defensive front's been strong. They got a really good safety, a couple of really good safeties. But overall, I think it's a team that has kind of showed its youth this year, showed its immaturity at times, and as that group matures, they are going to be a really fun team to watch over the next, I think, 2-3 years.
Yeah, I mean, offense, name of the game. They play a fun brand of football. They really, try to press it. Although I thought they didn't press as much down the field, but still, they were successful in picking up big chunk plays. And, ETSU Western game, other than one, I think in 2017, they've all been one-score games and been entertaining. I take that back. Last year's wasn't either. But it's because second half ETSU ran away with it. So 17 and 21. The other 4 have been one-score games.
Yep.
So.
And
2 overtime games.
And Western Carolina was aggressive on fourth down. There were several situations where they had the ball in plus territory, and they went for it on fourth down. And you think about that. Think about the first one. I mean, they were 4th and 11 after the incomplete punt. They take over at the 27. They go backwards. It's 4th and 11. It's like, well, we don't know if our kicker can kick from here. We're going to go for it. It's early in the game. Got a chance to put our foot on the throttle here. And they didn't get it, but they were aggressive, and they went for it. And they were then they had a fumble on another 4th down, and then they got the third one. So they were 1 for 3. But they were not afraid to keep their offense on the field in pressure situations. And I thought that was something that came away from conversations with Chaz Scales, the defensive coordinator, with Cade Bell, the offensive coordinator, and obviously with Kerwin during the week, is they always play on the edge. They're all about being on the edge of because playing on the edge is how you make explosive plays. And Catamounts made plenty of explosive plays on Saturday. Do you still use this in basketball? I'm assuming you do.
I did.
Okay.
Even though it's a little football sounding.
It is a little football marching band sounding, yeah.
All right, SoCon scores we don't need to worry about. Citadel beat Virginia Lynchburg by a lot.
Good for them. I'm glad they won a game this year.
Wofford got a win over VMI. Coach Watson, what is he now? I guess he technically has to take the loss for Sanford, which is tough. He only was the interim head coach for a day before he had to play a game.
So they're 2 and 3 under him?
So I'm going to go ahead and count that on Conklin.
Okay.
So is he 3 and?
That's very benevolent of you.
Didn't he win 3, or did they only won 2? They only won 2. I thought they won 3.
Well, let me double check.
Hey, you double check. I thought.
Yeah, they have won 3. You're right. Citadel, us, and VMI.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the VMI. I'm staring at the score. You think I'd remember that? 34-16 won that one.
I don't think they'll win. I don't think they'll win in Greenville. I don't think they'll win in Greenville this week.
I don't know. Rivalry game. They got nothing to lose. Super Bowl. We'll talk about that later in the week. Let's don't talk about that now. So those are the 2 I really don't care about. Sanford goes to Chattanooga, and I think not shocked that they won, but they were up. I think it was 35-17 at one point.
They were up 28-7 in the second quarter.
Yeah, they were both. They were up 28-7 and then 35-17 when they scored with 10-17 to go in the third quarter. And, I mean, it really looked good. Took advantage of a couple of turnovers. Their first score came off an interception. Ford did play in the game. Chat came right down and scored. And then Michael Hires, touchdown run and then 2 passes to Kendall Watson. One got called back because it was scored a touchdown, but then he had stepped out of bounds. They reviewed, and correctly he came he had a foot out of bounds, got back in bounds, catch the ball. And because he was not forced out, he can't be the first one to touch it. So, either way, it was a great win for Sanford. They celebrated on Chattanooga's field. I don't think Chattanooga liked that very much, but my theory on that, if you don't want Western to celebrate on your field or Sanford to celebrate on your field, you just need to win, and then you don't have to worry about it. But Sanford has found out that they needed to improve the defense. They have done that this year, and because they have done that, and it's not about trying to lead the nation in scoring, which has always been my complaint with Sanford, they are your automatic qualifiers no matter what happens next week.
Correct. They have won the automatic bid, and frankly, they deserve it. They've kept themselves clean all throughout this process of trying to get through a really, really rigorous Southern Conference and a strong Southern Conference this year, especially at the top. They played Furman, and they got a win. They played Chattanooga, and they got a win. They play Mercer this week, and now they're in a position where if they win that game, they are almost assured of a top 8 seed. Because I think the SoCon champion from a group of pretty strong top 4, I think the best team of that top 4 should be in the top 8 in the country. And I don't think you'll get a lot of resistance on that. all of their receivers were great. Chandler Smith, Kendall Watson was awesome. DJ Rios made some big plays for him. Obviously, the big 80-yarder. That's going to get the juices flowing a little bit for anybody, at the end of the game. But, man, what a performance on both sides of the ball from Samford. They turn Chattanooga over a couple of times, stop them on downs once. Yeah, Ford was averaging 6 yards a carry, and he scored some points. But when you get those kinds of stops and your offense can get you separation, that's all that Samford needs. They need 2 turnovers a game, and they will win by 2 scores. And that's what they got. I have a feeling that they will find a way into a turnover here or there in that Mercer game, because this team has just been really fantastic. And you got to tip your cap to them. Like it's no longer a question of, well, we could have done this, or they could have done that, or they could have lost this team, or they could have blah 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 blah. If you are 7 games into your 8-game schedule in the SoCon and you haven't lost yet, if you play your worst game of the year against Tennessee Tech and you find a way to win it, if you show up at the beginning of the year and beat a much ballyhooed Kennesaw State team. Now, granted, that Kennesaw State team did kind of crash and burn, but we were all about Kennesaw State this year. We were all about Brian Bohannon's team. Samford came out and immediately put a stop to it. Week 0, come out and put a stop to it. That's a team that deserves all of the praise it's getting. I mean, I don't think it's a stretch to say that Chris Hatcher is the coach of the year in the SoCon for what he's been able to achieve with this group. The improvement on defense, the overall aptitude on offense that's generally been there. I think he's the coach of the year.
I'm going to read you a random drive, and you tell me what team.
Okay.
19 plays, 84 yards.
Oh, that's definitely Samford. 19
plays, 84 yards. 4 minutes, 17 seconds.
That's absolutely Samford.
19 plays.
19 plays. How many? Do you know how many of those were? How many of those were pass plays? Probably most of them.
I can.
Because if you're doing 19 plays in 4 minutes, that's a lot of incomplete passes. And Hires didn't throw that many incomplete. He only threw in 10 incompletions.
Let's see here. Pass for 9 yards, rush up the middle, rush up the middle, rush up the middle, pass incomplete, pass complete, rush up the middle, pass complete, rush, pass complete, incomplete, complete, touchdown. So, the 3 straight, and this is again where I think Samford has always been able, for the whole game. Now they're throw ETSU out whenever they've been able to score 90 on ETSU in the last 2-3 years. But they always have a spurt in a game where it seems like they score. Same thing against Furman. They had 3 straight possessions with a touchdown, or maybe 3 touchdowns and a field goal. They go 4 straight possessions with a touchdown against Chad, and then they struggle, get it to 5, because basically they took a knee. They went 4 touchdowns, take a knee, touchdown. So I'm going to take the knee out. They went 5 straight possessions, touchdowns, and then in between that, punt. And that's sort of what they do. When they score and get kind of going and figure out something, they score 21, 28, 35 points in a row, and then generally teams can, at that point kind of slow them down or whatever it is, figure it out, and then it's too late, because by the time you allow a 28, straight points, or 21 or 20 or whatever it's been. So
here's the other thing, and this is the drive that impresses me. So when I was at North Dakota State, they went on the road in 20, I think it was, I want to say it was 17. They went on the road to Eastern Washington, and they blew them out. It was 40-13 in that game. And the last possession of the game, North Dakota State ran a 17-play, 81-yard drive that took the last 11:50 off the clock. And they got down to the 4-yard line and took a knee and said, "No, we're done. You're beat." Samford ran a 15-play drive in plus territory. They went 42 yards from their own 20, so they went into plus territory. 15 plays, 42 yards to take the last 8:05 off the game clock. and just refuse to let Chattanooga have the ball back. How many Samford teams in the past would even think about doing that?
None. I can already tell you, none. I've watched all of them. None.
This is a different team. This is not your dad's Samford team. It's not even your older brother's Samford team. This is a different beast. It's taken the lessons of the last 5-6 years and applied them in ways that have made it the best team in the conference. And everything about that win at Chattanooga, except maybe the 24 points allowed, because you really like to allow probably 17 in a game. But even then, with as much explosion as you can get out of that offense, you take it. That'll do. You win games giving up 24 points. You win a lot of games giving up 24 points a game if you're Samford. So this is a very different team. It is clearly a special team down in Homewood. And I look forward to seeing them in the playoffs because I think this is at least a quarterfinal team.
The other Southern Conference game that was of note of ranked teams that had national attention were the Furman Paladins at the Mercer Bears, which, of course, Furman, by now you know the score. They had won 23-13. And I'm going to start here. How many penalties do you think Mercer had in that game?
8.
1.
Really?
Would you like to know what the one penalty was?
Was it the penalty that set up the game-winning score?
It was not. It was a targeting call on Ty James, who was on the punt team. So he was ejected mid-second quarter after catching a touchdown pass and was not allowed to be on the field the rest of the game.
Oh, man, that's brutal.
It's the only penalty Mercer had. Now, I've watched it, and I get it. Mercer people who have really come at me hard this year because of, I guess, our celebration last year on the podcast of the championship game.
I wasn't part of that.
So,
I wasn't part of that.
And have they come at you?
No.
Okay, so they've gone to the right guy. Let me just say that. But in fairness, we've had good conversation back and forth. They're not over the top. They're just enjoying the fact that going into that game that, Mercer was where they were and ETSU are where we are. That being said, they asked me to look at it. Kevin Marshall, FCS Radio Nation, wanted me to look at it. SoCon John, Furman apologist, wanted me to look at it. I looked at it, and I get where Mercer fans could be a little it's one of those calls. So the punt returner, Callie Chiswick, is going to catch the punt, and as he's catching the punt, he knows he's about to get hit because he doesn't call for a fair catch, and he kind of ducks as he's catching it, and Ty James is a crown of the helmet to the face mask. And so it's a bang banger, but it's the crown of the helmet to the face mask. And I know it's tough because Chiswick is ducking at the last second, but it's so fast, it's hard to tell would he or would he have not hit him there anyways, or would he have caught him in the upper chest neck area that still would have been ejectable. A couple of people said, well, why is Ty James on the punt team? And then I shot back at him. I said, well, Quay Holmes was on the punt team last year for ETSU.
Because he's one of your fastest dudes.
And more...
Just get down the field and force the guy to make a fair catch.
Well, yeah, or just if he does break away, you got guys you want that are football players that can make tackles. I mean, ETSU and a lot of teams have made a change where, yes, there are a few backups on kickoff teams as far as backup linebackers, tight ends, safeties, third, fourth-string tailbacks, whatever, that are on those teams. But on punt teams, a lot of times there are starters on offense and defense. Maybe some nickelbacks, but there's a lot of Tyree Robinson was on it. Sailors and Holmes were both on it last year. So talking to this coaching staff, last coaching staff, Carl Torbush's coaching staff, a lot of people now are like, hey, those special teams plays add up. And you want your best people on the field, and a lot of them have the agreement. Like, look, you play on 2. We're going to put you on 2 of the special teams, not 4 of them, right? So even a couple linemen that are on the punt team or on the field goal team, but they're not on the punt return team or whatever, kickoff return, whatever. So that being said, I understand why Ty James is on there. He was a gunner. He did his job. Get down there and try to force a fair catch. Callie Chiswick didn't. He's trying to make a play. It's unfortunate. It's the way the game is called. I get no one liked it for Mercer, but by the letter of whatever targeting is, it was the correct call, whether we all like it or not. Now, there's always been that talk of if a guy ducks and you're already kind of committed that you're the one that gets ejected and you can't change it. And I agree with all of that. The problem is that is not how any rule is written. And so it was a true – and Drew Cronick lost his mind, as you would imagine he would. And it was call targeting on the field, and it was upheld by the booth. So it went through all the proper channels. And unfortunately for Mercer, your best player who already had a 3-yard touchdown reception about 5-6 minutes prior to being ejected for the rest of the game, I think changed some of the complexion of the game. I mean, obviously that is one of the two main targets between Devron Harper and Ty James. Those are the two targets that you would throw the football to if you're Fred Payton. And Mercer had 316 yards of offense, and Furman 460. And it was a good day for Tyler Huff. 293 yards, passing the football.
56-yard touchdown to Josh Harris. I don't think.
And he ran for 76. Was going to be out of the point.
I don't think for a second that losing Ty James to targeting is what cost Mercer that game. Mercer lost that game where a lot of teams have lost to Furman this year. They lost it at the line of scrimmage. How many times have you and I sat here and talked about the Paladins have probably the best offensive line in isolation, the best offensive line in the SoCon this year? We've talked about it several times.
A lot.
It's a great unit. They play extremely well together, and they average just under 5 yards a rush as a team. Mercer, now this is sack adjusted, 1.8 yards, and 4 times the rush got to Fred Payton.
Which is a season high that he was sacked, by the way.
Yes. So offensive and defensive line delivered for Furman. And that's why this team is in the position it is in, because it has the ability to win consistently on both sides of the ball at the line of scrimmage. Their playmakers are inside the hashes, and they are 6'4" and 300 and some odd pounds, and they eat 2 pizzas stacked on top of each other every day at the dining center. Like, they are those kinds of guys, your old-fashioned hog molly football players. That's where this Furman team really shines. And they shined in a big way against Mercer on Saturday, and that is where they won the game. And it's just refreshing that in this era where so many teams try to run 5 receivers and they run 10 personnel, empty backfields, all this smoke and mirrors stuff and tempo and motion and, Chip Kelly's Oregon offense, that teams still win games with the caliber of their offensive and defensive lines. And Furman is that team that wins games in the trenches. They create time for Tyler Huff, who was not sacked and averaged 9 yards a pass, including that 56-yard pass to Harris for the score. Their run game was really strong. This team is winning games because of its lines, and it will win against Wofford because of its lines, and it will probably win its first-round playoff game because of its lines. This team is playoff bound at this point. With wins over Chattanooga and Mercer, I think you have to be.
What if they lose to Wofford?
If they lose to Wofford, I think they're one of the last 1 or 2 teams in. But I think they should be in at this point. The caliber of their achievement would not be diminished by, or not be completely eclipsed by, a loss to a team that has found its second wind in the second half of the year with the coaching change in Wofford.
Well, and we will break that down a little bit more for you on Wednesday. We'll do yet another breakdown of the
I have
playoffs.
It ready to go.
Okay, we're going to do that on Wednesday because we got to talk a little basketball.
Basketball. Basketball. Basketball. Basketball. It's not what you heard. It's what you hearing. Or something like that. Oh, what a good weekend for ETSU hoops. 3 out of 4 wins. 2 for the women, 1 for the men. A tight game against the best team in the Sun Belt. on Sunday at the Asheville Championship. It was a solid weekend.
Let me say this. I was singing the praises after the first exhibition game of Giselle Thomas.
You were on that hype train early. And
I mean, I think she was 19 for 35 from the field and 14 for 16 from the line, or 12 of 14 from the line. Either way, solid numbers en route to 32 and 22 points back-to-back games. And I thought the first win going on the road was, a little bit of a tone setter at St. Bonaventure's. But then the Lafayette to go and win by 20 or whatever, I was like, that was, to win.
You want the numbers?
Yes.
You want the numbers for the weekend?
What do you got?
19 of 35
okay, I got that
from
right.
the field, and 4 of 9 from 3-point range. 12 of 14 from the stripe.
All right, so I knew it was 14 or 16, 12, 14, but 12 of 14 from the stripe. The 4 threes is encouraging because that I thought was maybe a part of her game that didn't look like to be there exhibition-wise again. But watching both those games, especially Sunday where I had more time to sit and really watch all of it, it was incredible to see her ability to make plays. And big first quarter kind of set the tone. But I think Brenda Mock-Brown and the dribble drive and whatever offense that she wanted to run more than maybe a little bit of the Princeton style of Coach Harris maybe fits Thomas better than what. Now, again, probably doesn't suit some other players, but for at least Giselle Thomas, she is off to a blistering hot start. And when ETSU gets Courtney Moore back, and they did get Neva Brown back, so that is
13 points against the Bonnies, yeah.
And that was helpful. You could tell there was somebody else to lean on scoring-wise from the perimeter. So just an impressive 2-game showing. We're going to have her second half of the coaches show tonight. If you want to tune in that on the Buccaneer Sports Network, we will have Coach Corals on the first 30. Next 30, we'll have Coach Brown. The following week, we'll have Desmond Oliver. So trying to hit all the bases during this crossover season, but I thought a very impressive showing. First time ETSU's won back-to-back non-conference road games since 2019. It was New Year's Eve, so it was almost 2020, but it was 2019.
That's a long time ago in basketball. I mean, that's what, like 30 non-conference games?
It's a lot not to have back-to-back wins. So in order to, you have those, and then they've got the Thursday noon game.
Yep.
Which we will talk about either Wednesday or Thursday. We're not quite mapped out all the shows yet, but we certainly are going to have a preview for that, the Thursday noon game, Jacksonville State. So if you're around the Tri-Cities, want to take a little lunch break, come catch a little hoops, you certainly could do that. But Thomas, a player that, we talked a little bit at nauseum, at least I have on the men's broadcast when talking about the women, the fact that she averaged like 17 at Florida International and Winston Temple only averaged like 6. And I don't know what the offense and what she was asked to do or whatever, but she's been able to get back to what she was at Florida International and then some early in this season.
Yeah, and when you have a team that's more or less brand new, which is what Coach Mock has, you are looking for somebody to step up and take the banner and lead and just be a go-to player that in a given situation is going to be able to get you a bucket. And I mean, as I was with the Lafayette game, she didn't score as many points, but the Lafayette game is probably better than the St. Bonaventure game because she had 7 turnovers in that game as well. But she didn't have any, or she had 1, against the Jaguars. So you're looking for that kind of performance, but that kind of performance is the kind of performance that's going to lift you to a lot of wins. Because then, all right, everybody's going to be on the lookout for 30. That opens the door for Courtney Moore as she starts to get back to 100%. It opens the door for Neva Brown. Can you get a different look with Jayla Rufus-Milner? Can you go inside? Do you bring an extra defender out? Okay, that opens the door for someone like Jakaya Davis. And this team plays or can play a 5-out look. They can straight up play 5 guards if they need to, and they did against Lafayette, and they won that game by 20 points. Jumped out on them and won it big. So it's a very intriguing team, but you're looking for that one reliable primary option. That's okay. this is our rock. Thou art Peter, and upon this rock I shall build my basketball team. That's what Giselle Thomas is right now for Brenda Mock-Brown. Is the primary option, the go-to player that's going to keep you in games, is going to keep you competitive, is going to get buckets for you when you need them, and that's going to give you an opportunity for your team to gel while still being competitive. I was a little bit nervous. I've been in those situations where you have a new coach, you have a lot of roster turnover, you have a program that's been through a lot in a very short amount of time. This is the third head coach in 3 years for ETSU women's basketball, and I was a little bit anxious. You go on the road that first time, you don't really know what you're going to get. To go on the road against mid-majors for the first time and to get 2 wins, I think speaks volumes for the ability of this team to be competitive in the middle of the pack in the SoCon and not just be, scrapping to stay ahead of Western Carolina at the end of the year. I think this is a team that has an opportunity to win some games in league play, and we are seeing the very formative moments of that right now.
Well, I think it helped last year. They caught a little bit of lightning in a bottle towards the end of the year. The big win at Sanford at home. Again, tied for 4th. Now, the tiebreakers didn't go their way, so they ended up being the 6th seed in the tournament. But still, they were able to get in a tie, kind of middle of that pack. And again, other than Mercer, I don't believe there's a clear cut. I think I could say Wofford Furman, but other than that, and I'm still not sold on Wofford Furman, so I don't think there's a clear cut number 2 team. So I think anybody the top and the bottom is dead set. And if you followed Southern Conference the last 5 years, you probably can guess who's at the top and the bottom. It's Mercer and it's Western.
It's Western.
So that being said, I also think it's going to help, and we like to use baseball terms a lot, but Courtney Moore's on a pitch count. And I said this thing when they get her back, and I'm sure somebody was going with she's played. Yes, she has, averaging like 16 minutes a game. So when they get her back a little more full tilt, then I think you'll see. I think it'll be a little bit still of a difference maker because it just gives you another scoring option. I know she had 6 points last game, 2 of 5, and Navy Brown actually didn't scratch, was 0 for 4, and the other game she had 13. So between Brown and Moore, I think as long as somebody can help Thomas up top, then I think Rufus Milner and I think Jakaya Davis can handle a lot of things on the block. Jakaya is an amazing scorer. Again, can she play 25 minutes a game? She hasn't, and she hadn't for a couple years. She's only been averaging about 17, 18 minutes, and that's kind of where she's lived. And, playing about 20 minutes is probably where it's going to be, but she's so efficient. Last game she had 16 points on 6 of 6 from the floor, 4 of 4 from the free throw line, 7 rebounds in 18 minutes. Mm-hmm. It's hard not to have her on the floor, but again, there's other players in the post, and I love the fact that they can rebound. When you throw in McDaniel, Rufus Milner, and Jakaya Davis kind of as the 3 and the 5s going in there, and McDaniel a little bit more of the 4, I guess. Then you look at some of the guards that can go get it. Thomas had 5 rebounds as a guard. Maybe Brown had 6 rebounds. So the rebounding to me is one of the biggest turnarounds this year that could help them win games, besides the fact they've got a special scorer at least 3 games into the season in Giselle Thomas. So pretty excited about what Coach Brenda Mock-Brown's done. Be real curious on a home game, noon, who kind of is ready to play in that type of atmosphere. Those are usually tough games for the most part to get up for, except for the fact I think ETSU played a noon game Saturday, or I know they did. So playing noon again maybe won't be that much of a shock to the system, but it's a midweek game, which I do think makes it a little bit challenging. But hopefully the noon game, ETSU women's basketball fans, if you can't be there, we'll have it on the Buccaneer Sports Network. Keith Brake on his first official call.
Yeah,
ETSU women's basketball.
Looking forward to it. Should be fun.
Now we flip to the men's side real quick. I think I was shocked when ETSU didn't win the game last night. I thought there was going to be a lot more not happy with the Bucks not winning, and it was the exact opposite. There were so many people that were like, man, the way they played the second half, the way that the post is there this year, and you can really rely on Jalen Haynes, who could have a special year. Brock Jancic, a little bit better than Elon, especially second half. He was in foul trouble first half, had a good second half. A little bit of a struggle, again, foul trouble, and we'll have to see how that kind of pans out. But Josh Taylor's a rebounding machine, 23 rebounds in the 2 games. King and Tipler need one other person to help him with three-point shooting. I think if it's just a 2-person three-point attack, it's going to be a little difficult. But the way the Bucks rebound the basketball and have a post game, and try to defend. There was only a spurt there in the second half where I think the defense a couple mistakes. But even Alan Struthers, I think he's a terrific on the ball defender. He goes and tries to get rebounds. So I'm very excited about what we saw. Elon was picked lower part of the CAA. ETSU won that by 13. Then you play Louisiana, who was the preseason Sun Belt picked to win the regular season championship, the preseason favorites, if you will. 10 of the 14 coaches picked them to win. And then they've got, maybe a pro on their roster in Jordan Brown, the 6'11 center, who at times looked disinterested, but when they needed it, he had 8 straight points, and they were impressive. It was a 15-foot jumper. There was a turnaround soft baby hook. There was a power the man down, turnaround, follow-away jumper. And then I think he just had a catch and shoot. I mean, it was an impressive offensive array when he wanted to. Now, I would argue if I was a Louisiana fan, I talked to a couple of dads that I'd befriended the day on the Friday before we played, and basically was like, hey, that guy looks like he's unbelievable, but he doesn't play real hard. And he goes, it's real frustrating for us because it was like he could have 35 a night. And after watching him Friday and Sunday play when he wanted to play and score 8 or 10 in a row like it was nobody's business, yes, he could. And I don't know if it's one of those where he's not challenged enough or if he just doesn't feel like he needs to. I don't know what it is, but he's certainly got some tools that he was given, at birth and all that good stuff, and he certainly worked on his game. But I thought Jalen Hayes holding his own on him was the most encouraging thing I've seen.
The front court problems are a thing of the past for the Bucks. I think this group has got it. Taylor is going to be a really, really fun player to watch. You see more of the high school background instead of the guy that a coaching staff at his previous institution did not think was adequate to be on the floor at their level. This guy is just a phenomenal athlete. He can do a lot of different things. Jalen Haynes is a banger, man. It's just like your classic get in there, roll up your sleeves, get your hands dirty type of basketball player that you love to see on the interior. It's a little bit old school. It's fun to watch him do his thing. And also, he's got a little bit of new school in the sense that he makes teams pay when you get physical with him and you send him to the free throw line. He was 9-9 in that game against the Raging Cajuns from the stripe. That's somebody that's going to be really important to this team down the stretch. I think this group has maybe settled a little bit on a rotation. I think they want to do 8. Would you like to expand that to 9 as the situation warrants? I think you can. I think you could expand it even a little bit more potentially. But when this team is in a game that it really needs, its absolute best to win, I think Desmond Oliver is comfortable shortening the bench to 8. I think it's Tipler, Justice Smith, and Jancic are the guys we're going to see the most off the bench this year. And that's not shocking given the first couple of games and the way they performed in those games. But this group's got something. And if people think that 6th is where this group is destined to end up because that's where they were picked in the preseason poll, I think you're going to be very surprised when we get to January and we get to February and this team is right in the thick of the upper part of the SoCon. Now, are they going to win the SoCon? I didn't say that. I don't know that they will. Can they win 18, 19 games and be a problem and be competitive and maybe finish 2nd or 3rd? Oh, definitely. Definitely. This team's got I think this team's got enough to be good in this conference. I don't think it has enough to be dominant. This is not a 30-4 team in the making, but I think they have the ability to be good. They have the ability to be competitive. I think Desmond Oliver has put together a solid roster for his second year in charge.
I agree. I think he wants to play 8. I think he's got to find that 8th guy. I think Justice Smith believe he's going to get more of a shot right now than Christian Shaw and Jamarius Hairston, and I think he deserves to get that shot. But I think still in the D1, the two D1 games, it's looked a little fast, and the physicality, and he's got a lot of holding and grabbing away from the ball fouls kind of called on him. So I think he's just got to continue to adjust to the speed and the physicality. But I think clearly Tipler and Janzik have solidified themselves 6 and 7 coming off the bench. Probably Brock coming off the bench first.
In a parallel universe, those guys are starting for this team right now. I think they're both good enough that they could potentially start for this team if they need to.
Yeah. So again, very encouraged. A big win against Elon, and down 14 at the half, got it tied. Lead got pushed back to double digits. Got it down to 2 in the basketball with 20-some seconds to go, and he gave it to Jalen Hayes, and it was just, again, a couple of calls that just, over the weekend, Bucks just didn't get a whistle or a flag or whatever it was, and it happens. It's sports, especially late in the game, especially in basketball. They seem to want you to make plays. Now, they called every other foul known to mankind. As the first game, Elon and Harvard was 2 hours and 20 minutes because both teams were in a double bonus with 11 minutes to go in a game. ETSU was in the double bonus with 10.5 minutes to go. And then it was a double bonus, I believe, with about 6 minutes to go. So, again, a lot of fouls, a lot of free throws. Early season basketball, right? It's what you sort of expect there. Yep. Real quick, because I don't want to do it a super, super deep dive, but I did want to bring up 4 interesting scores Thursday through Sunday in no particular order involving Southern Conference teams. Davidson barely escapes beating VMI. The new look Keydets at home. Davidson squeaks away a 75-71 win. That kind of raised an eyebrow. The Citadel knocked off Presbyterian, who's not particularly great in basketball, but the fact that they were able to kind of get a win kind of early for Ed Conroy and his team coming back. And, boy, Stephen Clark, 23 points and shooting the basketball very well. Wofford, a loss that I thought was head-scratching, lost to High Point, 91-80. Both teams, and this does not sound like a Wofford game, in the second half, Wofford put up 58 points, but then gave up 52. We're used to the Wofford in the 22 to 20 range first half and second half splits, as opposed to 22 and 58. So able to score B.J. Mack 21 for him, kind of led the way. And then the one that a lot of Buck fans were talking about, because it's a team that ETSU, if you were in the ASUN for a long time, you hated the Belmont Bruins. Furman, 15 better. 89-74 over the Missouri Valley. Belmont, that sounds weird, right? The Missouri Valley, they've changed leagues a couple of times. They were at ASUN, OVC, now in the Valley. And Mike Bothwell, 25 points. Slauson, 17-12. And that was a big win.
Were there any catastrophic game-changing technicals in that game?
Not that I am aware of.
Okay.
I didn't do a super deep dive of basketball. I'm trying to get through football, and then I'll probably start watching all these hoops games. And that is one because Belmont, who is now in the Valley, which can get multi-bid, multi-teams in the 100%. Tournament.
And will, I think, this year.
So they tried to up their non-conference because they are playing Sanford, Furman, and Chat, the top 3 teams in the Southern Conference, and they've got another few games scheduled on there from other mid-majors, the top couple teams in those leagues as well. So they weren't trying to cherry-pick some of the bottom teams and play, Citadel, VMI, Western. I mean, they took the top 3 teams on the schedule, and we'll see how that works out for Belmont. For the league, it would be great if, everybody in the league beat them and Belmont goes on a run afterwards. But I thought, give Bob Ritchie and his squad credit. Big home win. I thought that was the biggest eye-opener. But those are the 4 Southern Conference basketball eye-openers from last weekend, again, on the men's side. So that is a look at the show today. We talked ETSU football. We talked Southern Conference football. We talked ETSU women's basketball, men's basketball. Both basketball teams in action Thursday in the twilight doubleheader, the noon, 7 p.m., and then, of course, Saturday, Mississippi State football. And Sunday basketball, both, but only cover men's basketball. You'll be doing TV.
Well, we're covering women's basketball. Right. I got TV.
Yeah, but you're going to be neutral. So it's not neutral. I'm using quotes. You'll be neutral-ish.
I feel like most of those broadcasts are like 55-45, which is reasonable. And then there are some that are not.
I think me and you try to go 55-45. I feel like some of the others are about 80-20.
That's a good point. That's a good point. What bracketology on Wednesday? Breakatology, even.
Yeah, bro. There you go.
Mercer fans won't like it. They won't like it. But other SoCon teams might enjoy it.
All right, Breakatology Wednesday. Jay and Keith, Buccaneers Sport Network.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me!